Hello there, fellow peregrinos. Welcome to episode 6 of the Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast, where we talk about planning and preparation for life on the road to Santiago and tips, tricks, and hacks to make your journey along the way easier and more enjoyable. In this week's episode, we're going to let you know about 7 sensational albergues that's come highly recommended by our previous podcast guests, as well as some I can vouch for from my own experience of walking the Camino de Santiago, and that will be the Camino Frances more specifically, and the Camino Portugues. So some recommendations for both of those trails. After that, we'll talk about some do's and don'ts. So these would be some guidelines and suggestions to be a considerate, thoughtful, and nice to share a sleeping space with pilgrim when staying in those albergues. We'll finish the podcast with 3 more frequently answered questions from Camino Facebook groups and forums. And those questions are going to be, what's the best way to get to Santiago Airport from the center of the city? Do I have to walk the last 100 kilometers to get my Compostela, or can it be any 100 kilometers along the way? And the third would be, does anyone know any movies or documentaries about the Camino de Santiago that they can recommend? We'll give you answers to all of those 3 questions before we finish the podcast. But first, let's dive into those 7 sensational albergues as recommended by myself and our previous podcast guests. So the first one is going to be on the Camino Frances, and the albergue is called En el Camino, and the place where this albergue is called Boadilla del Camino. So this was recommended by our podcast guest number 1, Tierra St. Clair, because it's a rural hotel with a swimming pool. That is exactly what you want when you're walking through the desert-like region of the Meseta. So, where are you going to find this on the Camino exactly? So it's between Castro, Jerez, and Fromista. So it's 6 kilometers before Fromista, which is the end of that stage. Now that stage is a 26 kilometer stage. So you could stop at this rural hotel, and it's called En el Camino, and you can enjoy the cool waters of a swimming pool after a hot day on the road there. It has an overall score of 9.4 on booking and a superb rating from 694 reviews. The price for a single night is €35 for a single bed. It will be €45 for a double and €55 for a triple. So, just to reiterate that one more time, that's En el Camino in Boadilla del Camino between Castro, Jerez, and Fromista. Okay, so that one is our first of our 7 sensational albergues. En el Camino en Boadilla del Camino. Now don't worry, because I will put links on our Facebook page, Camino de Santiago Pilgrims Podcast. So all you got to do is click on there and you can get all the info for all of these places that I'm mentioning on there, okay? It'll be lovely if you could chuck us a like while you're there. That would be fantastic. So, number 2 of our 7 sensational albergues would be the Camino Frances again, and this place is called the Albergue Rosalia. Now, our first podcast guest, Tierra, recommended this place for its hospitality and very kind host, Javier. Now, this albergue is pretty close to the last one. It's some 20 kilometers before the En el Camino Hotel in Boadilla del Camino. Sorry, I sometimes find my vowels start getting into a mess when I switch between Spanish and English pronunciations. But anyway, yeah, so Albergue Rosalia, 20 kilometers before En el Camino en Boadilla del Camino. So if you're starting your day in Hornías del Camino, which is a 20-kilometer day, which is the complete stage to get there, you could potentially stay there. So the many perks of staying in this place, according to their website, include a washing machine and dryer, clotheslines to hang your dirty and wet clothes up, heating if you're walking in the winter, air conditioning if you're walking in the summer. We all know how hot that can get. A plug for each bed so you can charge your phones, and make sure you've got that ready to use in emergency for the next day. A first aid kit could come in hand with your blisters, and a hairdryer if you're having a bad hair day. Last but not least, if you don't like to pay to carry cash with you, they accept payment by card. And there's also a vending machine, so you can get some drinks and snacks. So those are a few of the perks to name, but a few. A single dorm bed in this place, Albergue Rosalia, is coming up at €10 on booking. And a double private room, so if you're walking with your partner or friend, that could be €30. Obviously, the prices may change depending on availability time of the year, but that's what is coming up as on booking right now. And that is with an overall fabulous rating of 8.9 on booking out of 337 reviews, and highly recommended by our first podcast guest, Thierry St. Clair. Okay, so that's number 2 of 7 sensational albergues. Our third one is another one on the Camino Frances. And this place is in Viloria de Rioja, and it's run by 2 hospitaleros called Acacio and Orrieta. And the place is called the Refugio de Peregrinos. And I'll say it again, that's in Viloria de Rioja. As I said, all of these places are on our Facebook page, so you can click the links and find out all the info there. And if you want to book, if you go in soon, then that's the easiest and quickest way to do it. So our first podcast guest, Sierra, who has walked the Camino 6 times. So she's a lady that knows her Camino onions, that's for sure. And she recommended it for its warm welcome and super helpful hosts, Acacio, who I think she said is Brazilian, and Orrieta. So you'll find this at the 15-kilometer mark between Santo Domingo and Belorado, and that's on stage 10 between the cities of Logroño and León. Okay, so stage 10 on the Camino Frances. On their website, if you're still undecided about staying there, there's a picture of famous Brazilian author Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Pilgrimage, The Alchemist, loads of best-selling books. There's a photo of him standing at the door, which I'm guessing means that he stayed there too. So if you want to write a best-selling book or stay in a place where a best-selling author wrote, then that's definitely the place for you. Now, this is coming up on booking as €10 for a bunk in a mixed dorm, for a single bunk in a mixed dorm, that's €10, and it has 32 reviews and an exceptional overall rating of 9.6 out of 10. So recommended by those reviews on booking and our first Camino guest, Thierry St. Clair, who's walked the Camino 6 times, and she knows a good albergue when she sees one, sleeps in one. So that's the Refugio de Peregrinos in Viloria de Rioja, and that is number 3 of our 7 sensational albergues. Number 4 came highly recommended by Dina Corcoran from Adelaide, Australia, our second podcast guest, because of its lovely and helpful hospitalera, Susie. Now, this albergue is located between Villafranca del Bierzo and Ocebreiro, which is the big mountain steep hike. I think that's Ocebreiro is a complete stage from Villafranca del Bierzo to Ocebreiro. The complete stage is 31 kilometers. So it's a long one and a tough one and a steep one and a hard one. So if you want to break up that stage, you could stop in Travadello, in Casa Susi, and slice it into two. It would be around 20 kilometers to make it up Ocebreiro from there, instead of 31 kilometers if you're leaving from Villafranca del Bierzo. So you could sleep there and slice it in two, and that would make it a 10-kilometer hike when you get to the climb, and that's up. I think look at my guidebook here, it's a 1,000-meter hike. So it's a tough day, so it could be a very good idea to slice it into two. I couldn't find any ratings on their Facebook page or a booking page for this albergue, but it does have an overall score on Google of 5 out of 5 from 85 ratings. Okay, so I have put a link to their page on our Facebook page. So like I said, just go to our Facebook page, Camino de Santiago Pilgrims Podcast. You'll find all the info on there. And like I said, this is recommended by Dina Corcoran and has a 5 out of 5 rating from 85 reviews. So give us a thumbs up and a rating while you're there. Thank you very much. That'd be lovely. Number 5 of our 7 sensational albergues is Monasterio Santa Cruz in Sahagún. Now, I'm not quite sure what the correct pronunciation of Sahagún is. I'm not sure if it's Sagun or Sahagún, but anyway, you get the picture. There's a link to this place on our Facebook page as well. This came recommended by Alison Hansel, who I interviewed last week. Lovely lady from the UK. She told the story of how she rolled through the door riddled with blisters, and how the staff and the priest was very sympathetic to her needs. They helped her treat her blisters, gave her hugs, and even a private room to cheer her up. So you'll find this one in Sagun or Sahagún on stage 18 of the Camino Frances, about halfway between Terradillos and Calzadilla. So I couldn't find any booking.com or Facebook page for this one either, but on Google it has an overall excellent rating of 4.5 out of 5 from 62 reviews. Just one word of caution. This place, the Monasterio Santa Cruz in Sahagún, is only open from the 5th of April to the 12th of October. Okay, so if you're walking in the quieter season, winter or spring, it might not be open, so it would be worth double checking. And that probably applies to all of the places we're saying, because obviously some of these places might change their policies and their plans throughout the year. So do double check by clicking on the links for all of these places on our Facebook page. Number 6 of our 7 sensational albergues. This one I can personally recommend for its hospitality, banquet-style pilgrim dinner, and the pilgrim blessing they give all the pilgrims staying there in the chapel afterwards. It's inside a lovely church, and the church is the St. John Baptist Church. Now, personally, I'm not a religious pilgrim. I wasn't a religious pilgrim when I walked. I guess I was on the way, hoping to be convinced, hoping to find some inspiration, but I found a lot of inspiration, but I still didn't feel the need to, I guess, dedicate myself and convert to Christianity. But I still really enjoyed being involved in the blessings and staying in the churches where the vibe is peaceful, the energy's high, and you definitely can tap into that and connect to that amazing, supreme, higher energy source in this place. And that was one of the special things about it for me. So yeah, it's the St. John the Baptist Church in Gragnon, which is a classic mystical village in the middle of the Camino. And as I was saying, it has a lovely church garden where you can write your journal, lay in the shade, and let the grass tickle your aching feet after a hard day's walking. So you can find this very, very special place. In fact, I would say out of all the places I stayed on the Camino Frances, this was my favorite by far. And it's between Santo Domingo and Belorado in La Rioja. All right, on the Camino Frances. So you can look that one up on your guidebook as well. There is no booking.com page or Facebook page for this place, but it does have an overall excellent rating of 4.5 on Google. Another word of caution, there are only 30 odd mattresses in this place. So it is a good idea to get there early if you want to stay there. That's not to say it's a race against time, because sometimes it can feel a little bit like that. But yeah, 30 odd mattresses, so it might be a good idea to set off early if you want to be guaranteed a place. I don't think you can pre-book, because there doesn't seem to be a page where you can do that. Okay, so number 6, that was of our 7 sensational places. And the last one I'm going to give you today is a place that my fiance Rachel and I stayed very recently on the Camino Portugues. Now, the last place I just mentioned there, which was number 6, the parish Albergue in Gragnon, the Church of St. John the Baptist. Now, that's a donativo, which means you don't necessarily have to pay anything. You donate what you can afford. As part of that donation, normally you get a pilgrim dinner included in that, which is a very special occasion where you get 50, I can't remember how many people were sat around a table, but it felt like it was 50 of us, even though there's probably only 30 of us because there's 30 beds, but a really, really special atmosphere, special ambiance. And yeah, I absolutely loved that night, and the people I met that night are people that I've kept in contact with ever since. Now, this is the other end of the scale, number 7, the Casa do Poco in Valencia, because this cost us €100 to stay, but I have to say it was worth every penny, because it was like going from economy style on a plane to private jet. Now, we stayed there because we couldn't, I think the municipal Albergue was closed because we were there in December. So our only choice really was this, as that's why we ended up having to pay more, but it was worth every penny. So if you're looking for a way to treat yourself from making it to the border, because it's on the border town of Valencia, if you're looking to treat yourself from making it that far to the border, I don't think you'll find better value for money anywhere. It's like an old stately home, and it has paintings in gold frames hanging on carpeted walls, creaking wooden staircases, logs burning on the fireplace in the common room, views across the river to Spain through the windows, a blanket of mist sitting on the riverbed. Very, very picturesque and idyllic. To top it all, the owners are absolutely lovely, warm and welcoming. On booking.com, it has 82 reviews and an overall rating of superb and 9.2 out of 10. All right. And at present, beds in September are going out for €70 for a double bed and a private bathroom, or €50 for a single room with a private bathroom. And we can highly recommend that you stay on the Portuguese side of the border and don't stay in Tui. There's a lot more to see, and it's a lot prettier a place than Tui. So we recommend staying in Valencia. There's a fortress looking across the river where you can go up and, stand sentinel over the border and over the city. There's quaint cafes and shops. There's restaurants built into the fortress walls. And like I said before, it's a lot prettier than Tui on the Spanish side, in my humble opinion. So we recommend you spend more time on the Portuguese side than on the Spanish side. There are things to see on the Spanish side too. There's a very nice cathedral looking back across the river to the Portuguese side. But in general, I think personally, Valencia knocks spots off of Tui. Our stay in Casa do Poco was made special because, like we said, the owners were so lovely, warm and welcoming. They wanted to offer us breakfast as part of the deal, but we said we wanted to get on the road early because we had a long day's walking ahead. But it didn't matter. They still got up very early, and they'd actually prepared a bag of fruit and some orange juice and water for us to take with us. And they even gave us a free coffee to have before we left. They insisted we have something to eat and drink, even though we said we didn't want dinner, and they didn't charge us anything extra for that. Lovely people. Honestly, you cannot do any better than stay at Casa do Poco if you're passing through Valencia on the Portuguese Camino. There is a son, there's a family-run place, and there's a son called, I can't remember his name. I think it was Rodolfo or Alejandro. I could be wrong on both accounts there. But anyway, I'm sure he'll introduce himself, and he gave us complimentary glasses of port. We were playing, my fiancé and I, Rachel, were playing drafts up on the top floor. We could see the border, parts of Spain glittering through the window at night. I mean, it's absolutely just perfect place to stay. Idyllic. So definitely stay there. You can probably hear me getting a bit excited about it because we're going back soon because we liked it so much to that part of the Camino Portugues. We're going to stay in a few places where we didn't stay but wanted to. That's a topic for another Camino podcast anyway. So there you have it. 7 sensational places to stay when walking the Camino de Santiago, and more specifically the Camino Frances or the Camino Portugues. I hope you found that useful. So, as I mentioned at the start of the So, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, I was going to mention some do's and don'ts, some guidelines and suggestions to be a considerate, thoughtful and nice pilgrim to share a sleeping space with. To that end, I'm going to give you these do's and don'ts. Now, these, of course, are not rules, but as they say in the Pirates of the Caribbean, these are more guidelines, okay? So this isn't obviously no rules or anything like that, but just some suggestions to be a nice person to share a sleeping space with. So we all know albergues are a godsend. They're affordable, a great place to meet people after a lonely day on the road, and often come to our rescue when we're running on empty. But, yes, sadly, there's a but. A minority of pilgrims use them and abuse them, sadly. And I did say a minority. Speaking from experience, here are my do's and don'ts that I thought to help make life in the albergues as harmonious as possible. So some guidelines, as they say in the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Pirates of the Caribbean, to help you live in a harmonious atmosphere in the albergue. So number one would be, do clear up after yourself. If you're making food in the kitchen, please do wash and dry up. If you're putting blisters on your plasters, put the packets and used ones in the bins. I've seen blister plasters and the wrappers and the packaging hanging around just next to bins. It's just so much more considerate to put them in the bins. If your socks have turned toxic and need to go into quarantine, put them in a place where they won't sting the nostrils of your fellow peregrinos. You get the picture. Leave the place the same, if not better, than you found it. That was our first do. So here's our first don't. Please don't cut your toenails in the dorm. I have seen people do it. If you see people do this too, put the cuttings in their sleeping bag and hopefully they'll sleep again while they're itching at night. Obviously, don't put them in their sleeping bag, but it'll be a good idea to just cut them outside, somewhere where people aren't sleeping or eating or doing anything like that. So, do leave boots in a designated area. Its help keeps the dorms clean, safe space, and is one less whiff in what can be a bit of a stinky environment sometimes. So yes, please do leave your boots in the designated area. That was our second do. Here's our second don't. Please don't play music or watch videos on your phone at full volume. Please be considerate. For some people, the Camino is a bucket list item. They're there to disconnect, rest, and recharge body and mind. So the best thing to do would be to bring some earphones, turn down the brightness on your screen, especially at night time, because the blue light is terrible for your sleep quality as well. And play music at a volume that won't disturb others. Best case scenario, just take some earphones with you, and that eradicates that problem immediately. Here's our third our third do. Do plan the next day. So use your guidebook where you can buy some food supplies. Where you can, look for where you're going to buy some food supplies for the next day. Where will you find your water supplies? How far until your next stop? So if you've got all these things written down, you know exactly what you're doing. You don't have to waste time in the morning. You can leap out of the bed like a frog off a lily pad and hit the ground bouncing. So here's our next don't. Please don't leave your alarm on snooze. I have heard people sharing a bunk with me and bunks next to me where their alarm, the same alarm, continually goes off. So chances are you will be sharing a hall, dorm or room with other people, and they might want to sleep a little longer without being woken up on the wrong side of the bed by, wake up, it's a beautiful morning, here's sunshine. You know, you get the picture, the Boo Radleys. Anyway, great song, but if you're getting woken up 3:45 in the morning and you just don't want to get up until 7, then it might not feel like a beautiful morning. So, I have a kill the snooze button, set it for a different time, or just put it on vibrate, and that way the disturbance you cause would be at a minimum. And like I said, these are just guidelines, okay? So they're not rules, and I'm not the Albergue governor, prime minister, president, king or queen, but these are just things that I thought of when I was in the bag. It would be nice if that person just turned their alarm off or put it on to, just didn't have it on full blast when they wake up, because I just don't want to get up yet. And maybe we've all experienced that. I don't know. So do pack earplugs and a blindfold to shield your ears and eyes from snorers and torch wielders respectively. Inevitably, someone in the Albergue is going to snore. Maybe it was me. Maybe I snore as well. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. I'm sure I did snore a night or two. And it's something people can't help. But just to help you get a good night's sleep from that, do take some earplugs, okay? And some people recommend taking silicone earplugs. But I would highly recommend them, because I didn't get hardly any sleep on my first few nights. And on my probably 3 or 4 nights in after I bought some, I slept like a baby the whole time. And the blindfold will come in handy for people that are wielding torches and headlamps. And that's another, people give their own opinions on torches and headlamps. Some people say put them inside a sock so the light isn't so bright, but you can still see around. Others say don't use them at all. That's a matter for debate, and possibly a few wines in a nice taberna in Galicia somewhere, or a nice taberna in Navarra. But anyway, don't shower dodge. By all means, grow a beard, a moustache, and let your hair take its own pilgrimage to the wild side. But please wash. There's not much worse than choking on the beefy body over and vinegary feet of a fellow peregrino. That's probably something we've all experienced. Even if the showers are cold, just have a quick rinse, and I'm sure you'll feel a lot better about life and yourself after having a wash. Anyway, and if you don't agree with these, that's fine. Send us a message and say, I don't agree with this because of that. And we can always visit the issues and these matters in another podcast. So do leave stuff behind that could come in handy for fellow peregrinos instead of throwing it all away. So your blister's cleared up and don't want to carry the disinfectant, plasters and gauze anymore? It may well serve someone else. Are you done with that book, map or info sheet? If you are, pass it on. Leave it for someone else. Just remember, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So if you're not using anything, do leave it behind if you think it could come in useful for your fellow peregrinos. Okay, and the last don't is, please don't dry your wet or sweaty clothes on the bunk bed frames. On my last Camino Portugues, I saw this happen on quite a few occasions, and I had someone's boxer shorts. Boxer shorts. That wouldn't be easy to say after a few Cruz Campos on the Camino. Boxer shorts dripping onto my own sleeping bag and bed when I stayed in a place called Hubaesh. And it was a little bit frustrating, and I had the awkward conversation where I had to ask the person above me if they didn't mind just putting it outside to dry. I didn't want to do it, and I felt terrible for asking, but I really didn't want their boxer shorts dripping into my face while I slept. So the bed frames aren't clothes, horses or washing lines that hang up your dirty or wet clothes. So please put them outside, and that will help you make more friends and not make the dorms more smelly. So if you could do that, that would be absolutely lovely. So those are our do's and don'ts to help make life in the Albergues just a little bit more harmonious. So, to finish the podcast, we are going to answer those 3 frequently answered questions from Camino Facebook groups and forums that we said we would answer at the start. Okay, so the first one is, how do I get to Santiago, or what's the best way to get to Santiago Airport from the center of the city? I've put 2 links to buses and taxis on our Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast Facebook page. The taxis are coming up around about €21, and the buses are coming up at around about €3. So if you want to see where you could potentially book those and get some web pages to do that, just go to our Facebook page. Okay. The other question was, to get my Compostela, do I have to walk all of the last 100 kilometers, or could it be any 100 kilometers along the way? Now, the rules are, and these are not guidelines, these are rules. So you have to do this. You must walk at least the last 100. It cannot be the first 100. It cannot be any 100 kilometers along the way. It has to be the last 100 kilometers which is why lots of people descend upon the trail in Sarria. Okay, so if you want to make sure you do pick up your Compostela certificate in Santiago de Compostela at the Pilgrims office, make sure you do walk the last 100, and the best place to do that, as most people do is by starting in Sarria. The last question, and to finish off this week's podcast, is: does anyone know any movies or documentaries about the Camino they can watch? And 3 immediately jump out at us. The first one is Footsteps, which was mentioned by Dina Corcoran. And this one is on Netflix. And it's a documentary about some guys that walk this documentary, it says, follows 10 men who agreed to walk the Camino de Santiago, a 500-mile, 40-day trek that will challenge their strength and faith. So, yeah, this is actually more specifically about the Camino del Norte. Now, we often speak a lot about the Camino Portugués and more specifically about the Camino Francés. My next Camino is going to be, after I've done a little bit more of the Camino Portugués, is going to be the Camino del Norte. So, if you want to get a bit more information on that, look for Footprints. I think I might have said Footsteps before. If I did, I'm sorry. It's Footprints, and that's on Netflix, okay? The other one to mention, probably the most famous one, is The Way. And this is about a father who heads overseas to recover the body of his estranged son who died while traveling the Camino de Santiago, and in the end decides to take on the pilgrimage himself. It's a very moving, uplifting movie, and highly recommend that you prepare yourself, because afterwards you're going to end up walking the Camino de Santiago after watching that. And yeah, it's got a star-studded cast as well. Okay, so that's the most famous, and yeah, that's called The Way. Okay, so look for The Way. And the other one, which it gets mentioned quite often, is another one called I'll Push You. This one on Google says 96% of the people who rated it liked it. It's got an 8.5 out of 10 rating on IMDb. And it says, in June 2014, 2 lifelong friends, Justin Skisak and Patrick Gray, embark on a 5.5-week journey to hike Spain's El Camino de Santiago. Their pilgrimage is further complicated by the fact that Justin is in a wheelchair. Hence the title of the film, I'll Push You. So, I'll Push You, Footprints, I said again, Footprints and The Way are the 3 movies that we can recommend that you could watch to get in the mood for your Camino de Santiago, or to reconnect with that energy once you've walked home. So that brings to an end this week's podcast. Last week's podcast will be the last one for a couple of weeks, because I've got to take a break, because I'm heading back to the UK from my home in Tenerife to get married to my lovely fiancée Rachel, and I've got people flying from all over the world. So I'm going to have to take a few weeks off to get married and go on a little honeymoon and a holiday and catch up with all our friends. I'd like to thank you all for tuning into this week's podcast. For the listeners that have tuned in so far to the 6 episodes from around the world, just at a glance on our statistics page, we've got listeners in Peru, we've got listeners in Italy, we've got listeners in Canada, in America, in Spain, in Colombia, in Brazil. It's just absolutely mind-boggling to think that this can be heard all around the world. Mind-blowing, and I'd like to thank you all for listening. And don't forget, if you do love the Camino de Santiago and you need another podcast to listen to before next week, do check out Dan Mullin's podcast, My Camino. That talks more about people's personal journeys, delves a bit more into the mystical and occult side of the trail. A great listen. Highly recommend you listen to that. And until next week, thank you very much for listening. Buen camino, fellow peregrinos. Wanderer, adventurer, said he's a secret philosopher. He's a wandering wanderer.